Interesting question, right? I was watching an anime which made me think of this because it was centered around a couple of characters who were executioners, and
Oh, interesting.
the idea of like them trying to execute as like efficiently and as humanely as possible, as to not cause the person pain and stuff. And like one of the criticisms that one of like the senseis had was that they still have fear and that they still have like doubt and stuff like this. And it
Mhm.
just like it got me thinking, like trying to connect all of these seemingly random dots about whether or not we should fear death.
I have
So
just been thinking about that actually.
no way. Okay, awesome. So I think, yeah, I'm interested to know, what do you fear death?
I go back and forth. I mean, obviously, there is the aspect of no longer existing the way I have come to understand existence. But my view on it is more or less that once I'm dead, that's kind of it. And I will be completely unaware of the fact that I no longer exist. And that's not the thing I fear. My fear is like everything leading up to that. Like if I am aware of the fact that I'm going to die, and you're always going to be aware of the fact that like eventually you'll die, and that is, I think, thinking about death is scarier than death itself. Actually dying and being dead, well, dying itself probably won't be that scary, and then being dead won't be anything. But I think it's perfectly natural to be afraid of probably the most catastrophic change in the way you understand existence. I don't think it's weird to be afraid of that, but I do also think it's possible to become obsessed with your fear of it,
Yeah.
is where I'm at.
I just read a really great article on it that took it from the kind of philosophical approach. And it was like, is our fear of death warranted or not? And if it is not, you have to ask yourself, well, to find out that, you have to ask yourself, is death bad? And for what reason do you think death is bad if it is bad? And I think it's really interesting. And so, like, one argument is that death is bad because you would otherwise miss like living years of your life in which you could experience and do things. And I'm not sure like about this, and I think because many people believe beyond just like the idea of your physical existence, the idea that you had impact on the people around you, the idea that you sent out ripples which will affect people long after your physical being has ended.
Yeah.
So I can see it from both sides of things. Obviously, you want to prolong your physical existence, but you will still continue to exist beyond that anyway. Um, and so there's many interesting questions. Like if you're an atheist as well, like why, like what do you have to believe in that would give you any comfort or anything like that in regards to death? And I think the general question is like it's completely up to you, and I don't think either response is necessarily like more correct than the other. It completely depends on what you value and want to think about life. But it's just a super fascinating one, and I think it's one that like I perhaps don't ask myself enough in a sense. It's like one of the
Yeah.
biggest questions of life, I feel like.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
so you kind of, I think it's pretty important to know what your opinions are on it so that it can kind of guide the way that you live.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was my big question of the day.
Actually, like thinking about it now, my own sort of like existential crisis after existential crisis, thinking about what I believe. I used to kind of, as a child, kind of believe in God, but more just like it's something I took for granted as like something that just was. And it was only as I got older did I start to think like, oh, I don't know. And I had my edgy atheist phase, and I'm now sort of somewhere nicely positioned in agnostic. Like I could never know. But like religion doesn't really figure into the way I think about things anymore. It used to, and it kind of also subconsciously inevitably will because I grew up in a Christian country. But growing up and sort of losing that belief in God was like, okay, well, what is there? And I've kind of adopted a nihilist viewpoint, not in the negative sense, but more like what is more popular now, which is basically if there is no inherent meaning to life, then it is incumbent upon you to make meaning out of your life. I think that's something that's really important and something that a lot of people would benefit from understanding and also would benefit from being helped by. I think actually that coming to that conclusion and then linking it to my political beliefs, I was like, that's kind of why I'm such a big fucking communist. It's because, like, I think we should all be given the space to figure out what we want out of our lives. And capitalism inherently restricts your ability to do that. If you're constantly thinking about, like, how am I going to pay for the roof over my head? How am I going to pay for food? How am I going to support the people around me? It stops you from being able to really consider these things. And from my perspective, you only get one of these lives. And I think to live under a system, under a regime that inherently restricts you from being able to live your life to the fullest is cruel and unnecessary. I think there should be a lot of work towards making it so not only do we have a future on this planet, a reasonable and like comfortable future for the people who come after us, I also think we should be working towards affording those people and hopefully ourselves the space to basically just exist in any way that we find meaningful. And that could be doing like jobs very similar to the ones that exist under capitalism, or it could be not working at all. It could be dedicating your life to art or any other creative, scientific, any sort of endeavor. I realize it's a pipe dream, but I do think, in my opinion, that is the kindest way we could arrange society that would benefit everyone, is if we never put anyone under any financial strain and we afforded them the opportunity to live their lives how they see fit.
I think it was beautiful. I think that was actually really lovely, and that would make a perfect revolutionary speech. Really, that was a call to action. That was a whole kind of reassessment of the state of existence, which I think really makes you like how it stemmed from the question of death and cycled back round to realizing what the importance in life is. I think is really kind of beautiful train of thought. And I agree. And I was having this conversation yesterday with a friend actually about the idea of existing in a post-scarcity kind of world where we don't have capitalism, where we have all of our basic needs catered for and the ability to, I mean, on the practical sense, it would look something like maybe having a 3D printer in your house and you can make anything you want. You don't need to purchase it from a company. The idea of money becomes obsolete because everything is in abundance for us.
Or living in like urban communes with like mini farms where you can grow vegetables. And
exactly,
because cities are kind of the antithesis of nature. And in order for us to really properly take care of this planet, especially for people in the future, we have to kind of rethink cities in a big way. Yeah. We have to reincorporate nature into them, because right now, I mean, London is so polluted. And that's a lot to do with the fact that there's not a lot of green space, because there's such a push for progress in terms of like infrastructure and building, like office space, new luxury apartment developments that no one's going to buy apart from some rich people in other countries.
And I think when we approach the idea of living in a post-scarcity world, is, well, we always imagine it like we're gonna get like find more things or be able to make things more so. And I think a big part of it actually would be psychologically for many of us to unlearn this capitalist mindset and instead realize that we're happier with fewer things.
Yeah.
And therefore we don't have to change we can lower the threshold for what is considered post-scarcity, to where we live in abundance, because currently we're just pushing the bar higher and higher and hoping for industry and production to overtake it.
Yeah.
Whereas in reality, we can lower that threshold by changing our psychology towards consumption, towards things. What is valuable? Like you said, living in a commune, growing your own food, you no longer need, like, you're not thinking about how marketing is pushing on you to dress a certain way or to consume a certain food product. You have all the food you want. You have the ability to make your own clothes the way you like them. And I think this is something that for me is kind of a big realization, because I think we live in a very scientific and technical world where we expect industry and technology to cater for our most unjustifiable desires, of having material things. Whereas instead, we have the power, you know?
And not only that, but to find the solutions. Not only do we live in a society that relies on industry to fulfill our most base desires when it comes to overconsumption and hyperconsumption, it's also like we expect scientists, the vague notion of scientists, to fix climate change for us.
Yeah.
We're just kind of hoping that somebody is like going to come up with the solution that sucks all the CO2 out of our atmosphere. And like, it's gotten to the point where people are actually trying to figure out how to do that, as opposed to thinking about ways we can, the ways we can lobby the big companies that are producing the most pollution, the most waste. Like,
Yeah.
there should be a lot of political upheaval in terms of fighting back against those corporations and their unchecked pollution, as well as like inevitably that will come with a pretty drastic shift in the way we live our lives.
Yeah.
But I think in most ways it'll be pretty positive. Like, it's
I think it's good to recognize our total like cumulative impact across our lifetime, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, we often look at it from day to day and don't think too much of it, but how much plastic have I thrown in the bin this entire week, over
Yeah.
the last month, over the last 20 plus years of my life? And I think we all can, like, I had this debate with my friend and it was going back and forth where it's kind of like individual responsibility or whether it's like industry responsibility. And I think we can all agree in kind of a middle where it is both, right? But like, I think, you know, big change comes from small actions. And so each of us does need to recognize our individual responsibility because it is exactly that. It's ours. And so we shouldn't expect industry to reduce theirs and then just to compensate for ours. Instead, it should be a combined movement of both industry and individuals. And I think it's the classic grain of sand feeling where it's like you're just one person with this tiny effect. And I think, first of all, it's not a tiny effect. Over your lifetime, you will produce kilograms upon kilograms of plastic waste, which is just, you couldn't even imagine it all in a room, you know? And yeah, I just think, yeah. I
do agree that like
this is never going to end actually. So
yeah.
I feel like this is a very apt point in time to cut ourselves off.
Yes.
I don't know if that's going to be the cold open or if we just save that for a little like a Discord nugget or something.
Maybe.
But that is the cold open. Cue the music. So, this is now episode
16.
And I'm sure one day I will remember exactly what episode number we're producing as we're recording it.
But until then, I'll always remember.
Exactly. I know I can rely on you. And so in this episode, we are doing a playlist that we titled Musical Extremities. And the reason for that is because we were deciding the theme of this episode and Joanna mentioned something really interesting and was like, what about really extreme music? And I was like, okay, I'm not sure what that means exactly, but I was like, it sounds cool. And you said you already had some ideas in mind of what you wanted to put into this. And so I went away and I was like, what the hell does extreme or musical, like the extremes of music even mean? So I was thinking, oh, okay, maybe it's something that takes instrumentals to the extreme. Or something
pushing
that
boundaries.
Really creative in a way that somebody's not done it before. And so for me, what I ended up going with is kind of just strange music. Music that kind of occupies a very niche creative field, I suppose, in my opinion. Like, I don't have loads of this kind of music, so I just kind of picked out the stuff that I thought was like, it always makes you stop and think, this is different. And sometimes there's a reason for that, and other times it's the music itself is so clearly different. And so when you first posed it to me, what did you mean when you said musical extremes?
Well, it was actually kind of, in my mind, I was going for a very different thing, which was basically just very loud, abrasive music. But actually, what I've gone with is generally fairly quiet. And I think in that sense, musical extremes or pushing the boundaries, whatever you want to call it, is more to do with how the music sits with you and also how it's structured. What kind of atmosphere is it trying to create? I think a lot of specific types of music, I should say, are meant to be instantly enjoyable, at least for most people. Obviously, there will be things that you don't particularly like, but what I've gone for is sort of more in the realm of unsettling music.
And so you also kind of moved away initially from the sound and more to kind of the theme?
Sound and theme. I was thinking of including some music that would have been more thematically weird, but they were all very long. So maybe one day we'll just say fuck it and do an episode where we have half an hour songs. But for now, I'm keeping it to like 5 minutes and under.
Okay, cool. And
stay tuned for the long episode, the 4-hour episode.
I think this is another classic episode where we don't have we come into it with different understandings of the kind of
like the lo-fi episode.
Yeah, exactly. And I really love that actually, because you kind of get an insight into our process, I guess, of coming up with this music.
Yeah.
And so I believe this episode you are up first.
I am? Oh. Okay. So so this is from the collaborative album Alter by the bands Boris and Sun, and this is the song NLT.